Welcome to the Human Performance Podcast. Here we talk about everything to do with human performance and how leaders and organisations can get the best out of themselves and their people. I'm your host, Alex Young. Hey James, welcome to the podcast. Great to speak with you today. How are you doing?
Alex, I'm super flattered to be here, to be honest, but looking forward to it. We've got some exciting stuff to talk about. I can't wait for it.
It's going to be fantastic. I was saying just before we pressed record that I love whenever we have people with a sports background on, and I also love whenever we talk about mental health, well-being and performance. So you may well be the perfect guest, but no pressure at all. And it also doesn't... It helps hugely that I'm based in Bristol. I'm a huge rugby fan, and your background is down in Exeter, just outside of Bristol. For anyone listening from the US or anyone else in the world, that's around about an hour and a half outside of London on the train, and is the slightly more relaxing, chilled, cider-heavy portion of the United Kingdom with a big focus on rugby. Which is James's background. So without me spoiling things for everyone listening, James, it'd be great to hand over to you just to introduce yourself and your amazing background.
Alex, that's better than the intro I got at my wedding, I think. So hugely appreciate that. I'm super lucky. We live in one of the best parts of the country, if not the world, and I absolutely love it. I've spent the last 9 years with the Exeter Chiefs, who have been incredibly successful over the past decade, and I've been very fortunate and feel very privileged to have been part of that journey. I was one of the lead sort of physical performance coaches, if you like. We call them strength and conditioning coaches there. And we've had experiences, memories, and more importantly, people that I will remember for a lifetime, which is what life's all about, creating memories and having things that you can talk about and tell stories about. We've been lucky enough, or not lucky enough, actually. I always tell people off when they say luck. It's not luck, it's fortune. The meeting of hard work and opportunity to win. Say we've won the Premiership, the European Cup. We've got, LV Cups. We've had a whole host of people go represent their country, the British and Irish Lions, which is the ultimate prize in rugby union, if you like, in terms of representative honours. And with all of that comes this heavy thread that we'll talk about, which is personal development and how that stands, be that physically and mentally. And in my book, they're inextricably linked. They are one of the same. But how do we get people to understand how important the mind is in influencing all of our decisions, behaviors, habits, and allowing them to be able to explore themselves? Super interesting. I've on that side of things. Prior to that, I tried my hand at playing, but I took 8 years playing to figure out that I wasn't quite good enough to be really good. So I very quickly went and turned my hand to trying to help people be their best. And then, very recently moved from, or following in your steps, essentially, into entrepreneurship and start in the startup world. We're launching a health, well-being and personal development app for corporates and businesses to help them get the best out of their people. And I'm sure we'll cover all of these in more and more detail over the course of the next however long we end up chatting for.
Absolutely. I think a great place that I love starting off with anyone who's got a sports background, and I think you're being pretty modest there because you've played for people like Saracens, Gloucester, some really good rugby sides, and then went on, as you very humbly said, to do performance coaching through a period of time at Chiefs, which was certainly, from as long as I've been watching rugby, one of the most amazing periods for any kind of rugby team at all, actually, which again we'll touch on in a second. But going way back to James, when you were sort of at school or kind of growing up, what was it about sort of sports that really sort of inspired you to go in that direction?
It's quite interesting, and there's a story here which links up not only to my sporting background, but to where I am now. And I went to a very rugby heavy school. My brother and I both did. And there's a little bit of, there's a not so nice bit to the story, whereas the school could not have been a better environment for me in terms of I don't know why, but let's say everything fitted, and the rugby was fantastic, and they had some great links, and that's how I ended up being in the Saracens youth squad, and then progressing through. And that school was close to where I am now. But my brother also went to the same school, and it probably couldn't have been a worse place for him. And he's where the mental health part of my journey has been very well coloured and makes me realise how important these resources are for people. And it is unbelievable how two people, same family, same upbringing, essentially the main difference being our age. So there was such a massive, massive difference between, it was almost like a diametrically opposed journey that we had through the school. So that's where my journey started. And sorry to say tainted a little bit, but it's impacted me from that day forward to now going into a position where I want to try and make sure that people who don't have access to the appropriate resources can maybe remove friction to getting to help. But back onto the rugby highway, yeah, it was amazing time, incredible teachers, fantastic environment. I took to it really, and I never looked back. I love people, and I love being in a community, I suppose, and all of those things really appealed to me. And I was at the right place for it. That's for sure.
And I mean, we'll dive into the mental health aspects and mindset aspects in a second. But I just, I guess for our international audience, and especially anyone in the States who obviously football is NFL to them, and rugby, similar ball shape, but very different sport. Your original position was hooker. What about rugby in particular sort of was the appeal for you?
Yeah, it was, say, a big part of it was teamwork. I love, and seeing what I could achieve, optimizing my potential, seeing what I was capable of. I was very early on told that I wasn't big enough. I've never been particularly. I was always small for my position. Hookers in the front row, sandwiched between two large loaves of bread, and you're often the ham in the sandwich. And that, I guess, was a bit of a red rag to a bull. I'm hugely ambitious, and I always wanted to see what was possible. And with that came, I say, 8 years of seeing what I could do with myself to not prove people wrong, but just see how much I could get out of myself and what was possible. And I think there's a huge area there where that personal development, if you can get that right, and what you can achieve through fantastic environment, appropriate resources, like it's amazing what people can achieve, right? It's incredible what people can do and what the human body's capable of. And I just wanted to see how far I could go and what I could do. Everyone wants to do better. Like I say, you see what all the people around you are doing, but when I reflect back on it, I feel I had an amazing ride. I got to do some things that money can't buy. I got to play in front of big crowds in important games, and you just can't replicate that. It doesn't matter if you win the lottery or not. Some people will never be able to do that. So it was incredible. And I've got great friends from along the way that I'm still in touch with, which is the greatest gift, I think.
Amazing. Well, one thing actually, when I was researching you that I didn't know originally till I dived a bit deeper, was you actually came out of retirement, I believe. Is that correct at one point?
Yeah, I was. The worst thing about this story is, so the club that I was working for needed somebody in my position. And I was like, so I hadn't been retired for too long. I'd say like 8 months or so. I was like, I'll come back. I'll help out. And I threw the pass that got intercepted. That meant we lost the game 8-7. So all in all, not that successful. But I very quickly went back to counting in reps and sets. That's for sure. Thanks for bringing that up. Not that it's stuck in my mind.
Not quite the Rocky or Rambo coming back out of retirement story we hope for.
No, far from it. The opposite end of the spectrum.
Well, I mean, obviously, I talk about human performance and coaching, and we've had people like Greg White come on the podcast previously, who've coached everyone with sort of celebrities doing their sort of sports relief and comic relief challenges. In terms of your own interpretation and why you pursued performance coaching in rugby and for Exeter, what is it that you sort of do just in practical terms for anyone listening, and how did you sort of get into that role?
Yeah, interestingly, it started out being told that they weren't going to keep me at the club that I was going to, but they really wanted me to stay around. And there was a coaching position open. Would they be interested? Would I be interested? And I had a good long, hard look at it and hung my ego up to one side and said, right, what's going to happen long term? What are you actually achieving here other than trying to continue down a path that, when you knock at something long enough and it's not opening, you've got to figure out why. And so I thought, well, let's see if I can utilize my skill set. It was great that they wanted to keep me there. They obviously thought that I had something which could add to the environment. And as I said, I've always been hugely interested in the physical preparation side of sport, say from a young age. And as I had to be, because to be able to get the best out of myself, I had to work really hard because I wasn't hugely best or big. So that I always made sure that was a primary concern of mine. And that then led me to think, well, maybe if the next chapter of my life is ready to start, maybe this is a great way to be able to go about it. And yeah, I went back to university age 27, did my undergrad and my master's alongside coaching, and did everything I could to try and make the most of it. And like, it's been hugely rewarding. You've almost got like what's the right word? Say you're looking after people to get the best out of them and really help steer them. It's almost like a pastoral role, effectively. It's not just about sets and reps, and it goes far deeper. And the longer you coach, the more you realize it's about the relationships and the understanding of an individual psychology and what moves, drives, and forms their passion drivers and purpose, as opposed to the science, which is important, but everyone knows the science. Like, it's there for everyone to see. The difference is being able to steer those individuals, and I've absolutely loved it. And helping people fulfill their dreams is huge.
No, it's absolutely amazing. And as we've touched on, Chiefs went through such a transition, everything from the actual business behind the scenes, where they were one of the most sustainable, certainly premiership clubs, if not global rugby clubs, where they could bring in players. They had like good gate receipts. They weren't hugely in debt, as a lot of other sort of sports teams tend to be, particularly in rugby. How was that, for you, seeing that kind of transition and seeing some of these, during your time there, seeing these players transition into really elite, world-class trophy winners, really on a from a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, fantastic question and fantastic place. Huge credit to the leaders that they've got in place there. Tony Rowe from a business side of things, and Rob Baxter, who's probably the most emotionally perceptual people I've ever met. He's got an incredible EQ, and that is one of his many strengths. And then they've managed to bring fantastic people in. But the interesting thing, and the area that I've probably taken most from, is the understanding that every single year it's about getting better, and understanding that change is a positive, that change and failure are necessary to create success, that you have to learn from what's gone before, why it hasn't worked. And that's everything from establishing appropriate personalities within the group so that they can synchronize and work properly, making sure that the environment's set up to be able to harness those individuals, making sure that essentially your hierarchical needs are well supported from about base foundational level of emotional all the way through to physical, and everything in between that will help with that on the field, making sure that the group are synchronized but regularly, and making sure that they do enjoy each other's company. And I think the last 19 months have showed us hugely how important human connection is. Not that I ever doubted it. Having worked in a rugby environment, you see it in the extremes, but it's unbelievable how much of a difference that makes, and being able to understand when and where is appropriate, and how to get them to work hard together, play hard together, enjoy each other's company, but have a construct that is set around values, means that growth is organic to a certain extent, but it's driven by those top guys so implicitly all the time that say those values and character traits are the things that they hang their hat on. And with that, you get unbelievable results over time. It's not about the best people; it's about the best group of people, and I think that's really important.
And for you as a performance coach, when you're working with players, I mean, the way that I think about it, for sports people, is very similar to someone who's an executive or the CEO of a company. Is that you've got to be looking after yourself in a number of different kind of domains or disciplines, whether that's your nutrition, whether it's your sleep, whether it's your technical skills training and doing the sets and reps, whether it's your mental health. And making sure that almost all those different buckets are sort of being filled and looked after, and you've got appropriate kind of support around that. Now, I know for sports teams, often you've got, big set nutrition teams, you've got people who look after the players sort of off the field and things like that. How on sort of like a practical day-to-day level did that work for something like a rugby team, which, as you say, there's a big squad there, there's lots of people from different backgrounds. How did your sort of role fit in around all that?
Yeah, definitely. If I give you a quick breakdown, sort of ish in numbers, I think my last year there, the squad is about 63 players. So there's quite a few guys involved, and that's everything from you've got 18-year-olds up to 35, 36-year-olds. We had a team of 6 physiotherapists, 4 strength and conditioning coaches, a couple of interns, probably 6 rugby coaches, 3 analysts. So it's a big setup. It's up around 100 people you're looking at to make sure that organization's operational day to day. On a weekly basis, the guys would be in for a Saturday game. They'd be off Sunday, and then in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday. And the big days would the week would build to a crescendo on the Wednesday. They would lift a couple of times a week if they're playing, but more if not. All sessions were monitored. So gym sessions were monitored by load and exercise type. So making sure that the guys had the appropriate eccentric load on their hamstrings in the gym, so that when they're running, that's making sure they run fast enough, depending on their position. Each player wears a GPS unit for every session and a heart rate belt. All of their internal and external load parameters are monitored and matched against their own personal database over the last 12 months. And then from that, you've got eyes on. So the best coaching tool you've got are our eyes, without doubt. Seeing how people are speaking to people, are they looking their bubbly selves, and then you bring all those pieces of information together at the end of each day, review every player, have a chat about it, and hope that you're going to make some good decisions. And those decisions could be around, as you say, it could be around nutrition, it could be around body weight, it could be around internal load, it could be external load, it could be the statistics that they've got in the game. So what they put together, what were their outputs in the game? Did they make a lot more tackles than usual? Have they had a long run of games? Does that need to offset their training? So there's all these moving parts, and that's the physical side of things. You've then got to layer on top of the cake. You've got to go, right, that's the physical. What's the emotional state of the squad at the moment? Has somebody been dropped? Have they been picked for the first time? Is it their first bench game? Have they been on the bench for 8 weeks, not got on? How have we lost? Have we won? Are we on a good run? Or are we on a bad run? Does training intensity with the coaches, does that need to be nudged up because we're not quite performing on the weekend, or there's a specific contact area that we need to address? So there's a whole scope of areas that you're constantly tweaking, changing, talking about, modifying, and I guess juggling to ensure that you are doing the best job you can to affect the performance and keeping the game at the forefront of your minds. Like, how are we going to get to the game, not just physically, but emotionally, absolutely on point? And it doesn't happen every week. You get it wrong. But that's what you're trying to achieve week in, week out.
And it's really interesting hearing you talk about, some of the data points that you use. And obviously there are some things like people's, how they're loading their hamstrings and things like that, or, their cardio, or, pulling off like Fitbit data or like actual quantitative data from devices and things like that. But then you mentioned you've also got this kind of just almost using your emotional intelligence at looking at how people's mood is and things like that. How did you find sort of like blending those different sort of types of data to sort of put that holistic picture together of the players?
I think it's the great thing is it's not just one person. As I say, there's a big old team of people doing it, and it's not easy, but it comes through relationships. It comes through knowing people. It comes through understanding whether or not they've got say personal issues going on at home, whether they've got injury issues, whether they've got stress around some additional university work they've got, and it's just building that intuitive picture of people the more time you spend with them. So when I initially went there, I would hope to think that I was a lot better when I left than when I arrived, and making sure that you don't take people's word for granted, and building that trust is huge. Like the more senior guys trusting when they say to you, listen, I've got nothing today, and knowing that if he's an honest guy, then you've just got to listen to him. You've got to trust him, and because nobody knows themselves better, like nobody knows you better than you, right? That's without doubt one of the key decision makers or key stakeholders in every conversation's got to be the individual. We've got there's one guy there who is the hardest bloke I know, and if he tells me he almost ran his training program. The guy called Luke Cowan-Dickey, unbelievable competitor, unbelievable rugby player, one of the best I've seen. And if he said, "No, not doing that today," he wasn't going to do it. And there's no point trying to fight him because he knew what's best for him. And if you engender people with that trust, you'll generally get back the rewards when you need them.
Really, really interesting. I mean, I think one of the things from my background, which obviously was orthopedic surgery, so we saw lots of sports people who would come in, they would have an injury, they'd get it fixed, they'd go through rehabilitation, but they wouldn't be back playing for a long period of time. And that obviously not only had the physical side effects, but also the psychological side effects. And as you alluded to, we've had this crazy period over the last sort of 18 to 24 months where in-person sport has stopped for certain sports in sporting events. You've then had players coming back and playing in front of no crowds, which again is just a very, very different environment to what people are used to. In terms of that kind of mental and mindset element of things, how did you sort of approach that? And particularly with some of the players in rugby, where obviously it's a real sort of big man's game, and often men in particular don't want to share any mental health problems with others, especially in a sort of work context if you're in a sports team. How did you sort of address all those mental and mindset sides of things?
Really interesting question, and hugely pertinent after, as you say, the past, I think it's 19 and a half months ago, isn't it, now that we first went into lockdown. And we had a period we had the 13-week period where guys trained themselves in their own time, in their own means, and we helped support them remotely with that. But the longer it went, the harder that became. We then went back to socially distanced training, which was, at first it was nice because people got to see each other at least, and it wasn't completely normal, but it was at least a step towards it. And then that went on for a huge amount of time, 15, 16 months. And so we actually won the double, the premiership and European double in front of nobody. Essentially, was really, it was bittersweet in some regards, because that will always now forever be my greatest rugby achievement. But not being able to share that with loved ones was strange, and it did. Say for me, it did take away from it a little bit. I'll always still be fortunate enough to be involved in those occasions and remember them. But I know for some of the guys, their motivation to play was affected by the fact that one of the great drivers was creating experiences for other people to come and share, which is what match day is. And it made it really difficult to be able to ensure that their mindset was as it normally was. Imagine normally you're used to running out in front of 20,000 people, screaming, fans going mental, and there's none of that momentum there. The results showed that the home advantage wasn't as significant. So it was complex everywhere from on the field to off the field for people who lived in South Africa, or who were from South Africa and Australia, and not being able to see family and had to come in and grind in and day out. And make no bones about it, like they're still people, and they're doing a good job, but they're not getting to see the people that they love. That was really tough, and it hit different people in a different way, and made some people question, was this actually the right space for them? But having heard back since having moved on myself, it definitely, the crowds have certainly added a huge amount to the environment and the drivers that people have had, which is great to hear. But yeah, let's hope we don't have to go through that again. That's for sure.
No, absolutely. And I mean, even before the pandemic happened, if you're looking after, very, very high performing, high level elite winners in the most cases, how does your role fit into actually like preparing people mentally for games? I mean, we hear about things like visualizing success and thinking about having that sort of winning mentality. But what does that mean kind of in practical terms if you're prepping someone for a really big, important game like a cup final?
Yeah, really interesting dynamic. So our job essentially is to make sure that these guys are absolutely pinpoint, tip top, as sharp as they can be physically across the board. Now, obviously, with that comes the mental, but a lot of what we do has to be synchronized with the on-field staff, because they set the tone in terms of probably the emotional gauge of where we are, who we're playing. Do we need to be fired up, turned down? Is it a massive game and guys could be overstimulated, or is this say a bunch of guys are a little bit flat and we need to find a way to get their tails up? So all of those messages would have to would have to be aligned between the whole coaching department, and then on an individual basis, making sure that you targeted guys. Some guys need some additional support, a tap on the bum, or yeah, let's go lift something heavy this week. Let's go and make sure that you literally feel like you can rip up trees. I'm going to tell you you're the biggest, strongest person I've ever seen, and I'm going to make you believe it, because if you believe it, then the world's your oyster. And empowering people as much as possible. There's a huge drive around a sort of growth stroke positive mindset, growth in the classic and positive in the narrative sense, mindset opportunities to be able to instill with people. And it's amazing how much of an impact that has, even with these guys who are at such an elite level. It has a massive impact. And you would not believe the size of some of the guys that are absolutely shaking in their boots in the lead up to games or before they even cross the white line. And then the whistle goes and they are like absolute hippopotamuses, rhinoceroses on the field. And you wonder how on earth they ever have any anxiety, stress, or discomfort about any of these occasions. It's unbelievable, like literally unbelievable. So, incredibly interesting dynamic, because you could have the smallest guy who's like a Rottweiler and you wouldn't even expect him to be put together that way. And conversely, the biggest, strongest bloke might be worried about, say, something completely insignificant that might not even have happened. So, yeah, they are just humans, and they've got the same worries, angst, stresses that we all do. They all fall out with their partners, come to work stressed. They all eat the wrong stuff, feel bad about it. Some of them have say these issues about, say, worries about playing. They have dips in form, like we all do at work. So it's just they happen to be incredibly good at rugby.
And for you personally, I mean, it sounds like an incredibly exciting time. What were sort of the things that you sort of took from that period, but before you decided to leave and transition into what you're doing now? What were some of your big takeaways and your big sort of favorite moments? I know you touched on the the sort of the double and things like that, and winning all these amazing trophies.
It's pretty easy for me. It's just the people I've met, without doubt, is so head and shoulders above anything else, because they're the ones who still give me fulfillment, and I've got great relationships with now, and they're friends now, and they're the ones that help support me, and vice versa. So yeah, it tends to be, I sort of say you probably keep in touch with 2 or 3 people from every club that you've been to, and that sort of tends to have been the rule of thumb for me as it's gone. My best mate still works in rugby. That without you say, you can't beat that, right? It doesn't matter who you are. People mean the most generally.
No, that's amazing. And obviously you, despite all that sort of success, you made a really interesting decision to then change up kind of completely what you were doing into really being a sort of technology entrepreneur and sort of helping people in the corporate sector, with some of the things you'd learned during that time at Exeter Chief. So what was sort of some of the impetus behind that, and what was the thing that was sort of spurring you on in terms of that decision?
Yeah, I'm not sure if my wife will agree, but so essentially, I've been with the Chiefs for 9 years. They've got an incredibly stable coaching environment there. I wasn't able to progress because they've got fantastic people in and around that weren't going to be moving anytime soon, and rightly so. And I thought that I've got to live by what I preach, and I'm all about growth, development, and challenging yourself. And I didn't feel as though I was able to challenge myself in a way that means I could grow and optimize my potential. I hope I'm right. I'm going to go out there and do absolutely everything I can to put my best foot forward and do something that will, say, hopefully help a lot of people in the world reach their full potential, or remove friction for them to get to amazing resources that will help them be a little bit better. So I had a year left on my contract, and I thought with the current climate, there's no better time to go out there and see what I can do. And I could, without doubt, I haven't felt this fulfilled in ages. I think there's like a difference between fulfillment and happiness, right? I went out, I raised a little bit of capital, and put my best foot forward. And so far, so good. I've got a long way to go, but I can't wait for it, and I can't wait to start turning over some unbelievable rocks for people and making them understand how amazing they can be.
Well, I mean, just congratulations again on making that, big life decision. I mean, it's not too dissimilar from what I had to do when I was, starting off with Verti, which was, I love my role working as a trauma and orthopedic surgeon. But there was just something in the back of my mind where I was like, could this be even more exciting? Could I, test and challenge myself to do something completely different and scale and grow a business? And that's really the bit that was driving me forward and got me excited, combined with that sort of big mission that we've got, which is very, very similar to your own, about revolutionizing how people kind of learn, train and perform across any sector. What in terms of your focus at the moment, for anyone listening who might be in a corporate or might be an employee in any sector, really, what is it that you're sort of working on at the moment?
Right, thank you. And I love your story as well, and it's hugely powerful for people to see people doing fantastic things. So, thank you for making that decision, because for me, it gives me that knowledge that there is, if you get the opportunity, right, there's some fantastic challenges to grow out there. So, but yeah, we're putting together, we've just launched our first beta version, an app-based platform that allows corporates to have a health development and growth partner. Essentially, we want to remove friction for mental and physical health issues. We want to promote behavior change and habit formation, and we want to provide a platform that helps your employees develop, and that's through in-person and e-learning opportunities. So we've just finished building out the health and wellbeing platform, which is based around behavior change and habit formation. Then we've just started the development of our e-learning development portal, and that will be everything from around learning about management, interview techniques, basics on your word suite, whatever it may be. And then looking at adding in the future, the opportunity for people to have live one-on-one coaching as well. The future's bright. It's expansive, and we've got to move quick because we know the spaces move quickly. So to do that, we're going to leverage partners to make sure we can get some market share quickly. That's the idea.
No, that's awesome. And for anyone listening, particularly from people who are either in the learning and development sector of their organization, or they are head of people or something like that, what is why are people so important, and why can technology be leveraged to get the best out of your people?
Yeah, amazing. You set me up here. Why are people important? Because anybody who cares about their people's got a fantastic opportunity to be an employer of choice. Anybody who understands that, and it's the old favorite, isn't it? Or what happens if we teach them and they leave? It's like, what happens if we don't and they stay? You want to have that opportunity for your staff to get the best out of themselves, and that's a massive draw for them not to go somewhere else. We know now that experience is trumping money in some established workplaces, that people want to go somewhere where they can have a great time and a brilliant opportunity to be their best selves, as opposed to go and grind out a 9 to 5, have no additional resource, and go home at the end of the day feeling unfulfilled. Those days they're moving past us, and some businesses are going to get left behind, and some are going to move forward and help grow amazing ecosystems and environments for their people to live and learn in. Then outside of that, I forgot the second part of your question. Sorry, Alex.
It's just how can the technology sort of be utilized?
Oh yeah, sorry. Thank you. Yeah, yes, thank you. Yeah, and the technology is an interesting one, because I think technology is amazing for reach, and technology is incredible for being able to support people when you can't do the one-on-one, or you can't be there for somebody, and having that resource to access and remove friction to help, A. But B, it's then about using it appropriately so that you can connect people. So you can use it for connection. You can use it for the opportunity to do special things together. You can use it to make sure your people have got access to the best resources possible. And I know you'll agree with this. Technology can be a double-edged sword. If it's not used appropriately, it can be harmful. And I genuinely believe that. And it's about providing the opportunity for people to be able to be their best selves through connecting them and making those memorable things. Imagine how cool it would be if you know that your workplace, it's going to be celebrated when you do something really difficult together, when you complete a great deal, as opposed to that just been, yeah, you just signed another check for us. And helping to build that team environment, I think, is hugely powerful. And that's where we want to start to differentiate our offering and get out there to really help build cultures. And I'm under no illusions that they're the businesses of the future.
Yeah, no, absolutely incredible. And it's very interesting, because if I ever speak to people in learning development or the people sector of any institution, I'll always say, why don't you treat your employees like high performance athletes? I am obsessed with data. I'm obsessed with tracking everything I do. I've got my Fitbit on for anyone listening, and I don't have a team of sort of 16 physios and nutritionists, but there's a lot that technology can do there to scale it for you, as a consumer, but also if you're a business, you can provide some of those as corporate perks to your all of your employees. And one of my favorite pieces of statistics really is that for the highest performing employees, once you get above a sort of a certain salary threshold, which
75 grand, isn't it?
Exactly right. The real bit there is people seeing their effort being utilized within an organization to move it forward, and it being recognized and then being sort of rewarded for that. And one of the amazing ways to do that is providing people with the best training or the best support, or just the best way to better themselves, whether that's through data, whether it's through education, whether it's through mental health support and things like that. And so I guess, let me flip that around to you. From your experiences of, working in a very, very high performing, fast moving sports team, how can that be transferred and that culture be transferred into the corporate setting?
Definitely. And some of it is almost counterintuitive. Some of it is making sure that you get your people together, making sure that you have a philosophy to base your ethos around. You've got principles that you abide by, that people can aim for. Like, it's, all the best businesses have, they stand for more than just the product. It's about having that drive to create something that will help change the world or the environment or the sector that you're in, and making sure that there's a real purpose to your business. And that is without doubt the biggest start point. I think you probably stand out on your own in terms of your guys' environment. So Verti is hugely dynamic space, right? So in terms of the AI area, and that's brilliant because it gives people such a tangible asset to be able to go and understand what they're trying to achieve. Like you are changing the way that people learn. That's huge. So people want to come and work for you because of that. So that's a start point, making people understand that, and then being able to resource it appropriately. So not making sure it's not just people paying lip service to it. So those are the big things, like your actions and environment and philosophy. Those three things for me would be huge.
No, that's awesome. And having, started your journey, and congratulations on getting your funding and starting to build things out, which is always really, really exciting, but also slightly terrifying as you're sort of, fixing the wings on the plane as you're starting to fly, which is the same for any early stage company.
What got wings, have you?
Exactly. There's one engine there, so in that kind of, that personal journey of you going from your sports background into now running a business, what have been some of the big learning points for you, or things you've had to learn that you've had to sort of jump into?
One thing I've learned is and you know this, but you'll never know it all. Find people who do know, resource appropriately. I found that people really want to help, which is fantastic. Generally, the majority of people are amazing and want to see you do well, so they'll do anything they can, but make sure that you use your time wisely, especially in the early days when it can be quite lonely. I've been incredibly fortunate that I've got, say, some of my initial round of funders, investors have been so helpful and really want to see us grow and develop. And that's been huge. And the most important one is back to the people matter, right? So make sure you're involved with good people. And like, I've been fortunate enough that I've had like a CTO jump along for the ride and a psychologist, and both of them, they've got full-time jobs, but they're helping me out initially on the back of some EMI promises for when we grow, but they're doing incredible work, amazing stuff. And that's hugely powerful without that. So use your resources, but get good people. Like you can't go past that. And that's everything from the people who've built our product to the people who are helping design to the people who are in the know in the areas that I don't know.
No, that's awesome. And, again, for you personally, like we sort of touched on, of your sort of proudest moments in terms of what you did during the Chiefs and your previous kind of sporting career. What have been some of the highlights of, what you've been working on at the moment in terms of, either building the platform or creating the content or getting in front of, some feedback on how this, might be helping people in the real world?
Yeah, definitely. The biggest one's having a product that works, and I actually quite like when you're involved in something a lot. You can sometimes, because you're always dismissing, trying to improve, aren't you? You're always, it's the old high jumper. You're always looking at the centimetre you haven't scaled as opposed to the 1 meter 80 that you have jumped. And just every now and then, it's quite nice to look back and think, oh no, if we can continue at this rate, I genuinely believe we can develop something that's substantial. And then the other thing is, say the horizon scanning probably, and what the potential is massive. And I think that the technology space is going to very quickly understand there's some SaaS products which are just digital and will be fine. But in terms of things that integrate people, you have to have stuff in person as well. And I'm really excited about creating opportunities for people to do great things for themselves, but also to create some memories and do some things that are outside their comfort zone.
No, that's absolutely amazing. And, for anyone who's listening, who might be, maybe they're in an organization and they're an entrepreneur, or they're just kind of starting off on their journey, or they are looking into just to sort of, self-improve or improve anything about their own performance. What sort of advice can you give people who are sort of just starting off on that? What sort of resources might be available, or where should they sort of start attacking that journey of almost like sort of self-improvement and challenging themselves, do you reckon?
Oh, I love this stuff. So a big thing for me, and I don't mind how people consume it, but start consuming content, whether it's podcasts, whether it's books, whether it's audiobooks, whether it's the appropriate social network platforms. make sure that what you're feeding your mind is healthy and going to help you grow. So we know from, say, neuroplasticity, from the science of how the brain works, that neurons that fire together wire together. So the information that you feed yourself has an impact and a huge bearing on how your brain grows and changes. And the thing that I always am astounded by is people happily go to the gym. Yeah, I'll go work out. It'll make me look different, but they're not necessarily as clearly educated around the benefits of appropriate exercise for the mind, if you like. And it's fine when you go to school and you're learning, and there's obviously different views on the curriculum, but we'll leave that for now. But just say your brain's been stimulated, and that's so important. So make sure that you are finding ways to grow. Make sure you're finding ways to challenge your thought processes. Make sure you're finding ways to be wrong. Make sure you're spending time with people who are having a positive impact on you. Don't feel, and I'm not telling you to go and bin all your mates, but what I am saying is that if you want to find mentors or appropriate resources, make sure that they're adding to you. People don't yet understand how impactful this is, but I've been there, I've done it, and I've seen it with professionals and with corporates and with people I keep company with. It is absolutely everything. Who you spend time with, what you spend time on, is what you become. And small things can make a massive difference. So, yeah, if anybody would like to get in touch with me about any of this stuff, I'll always happily throw a load of resources their way. Everything from fantastic people to follow socially, all the way through to incredible books with amazing lessons and fantastic insights. And yeah, I could go on about it all day. I genuinely do believe that's the way forward, especially as we get a little bit older. Right? I think it's so important to keep learning. Well, it is so important to keep learning.
Whenever I get asked this question, that's why I like asking it to other people as well, to get their opinions on it, to optimize my own. But whenever I get asked it, I always get very excited about people just at the beginning of their journey, because there are so many resources now, and it's really about immersing yourself in all of these and finding and feeling your way around, what you connect with the most and what you get the most benefit from, and just really trying things from some of these either books or podcasts or whatever it is you're doing, and putting that into practice as the best way to learn, really. I mean, one sort of thing, just as we sort of start to wrap things up, I'd love to get your opinion on, now that you are an executive in a company, and I, increasingly have very little time, and, I'm always trying to look after my fitness. I try and sleep more than I do at the moment, because I get so excited I never go to sleep and I wake up far too early, or then I'm on a plane. But looking at how you are sort of performance coaching sports professionals, for people in any industry who are just very, very busy, if they can only sort of do a couple of things, what do you think are like some of the things that impact people's either mindsets or health, or just their drive or their energy levels on a day-to-day basis that people listening to this podcast could put into action, like tomorrow, if they wanted to?
Sleep, number one, without any, and it has a huge impact on not only our mental health but also our recovery. So when we sleep, and you'll know this, so your brain separates and washes out all of the sort of toxins and breakdowns from the day, and then say when we wake up, we reset again. We've got a fresh mind, and that's why it's easier to think with more clarity. Why our neural connections happen mostly over the course of the night and all. So that's a massive one. Sleep, finding a way, and I'm terrible for this, so I'm learning as we go. But say disconnecting from these for a period. I'm hugely fortunate. I've got 3 happy, healthy children. So when I come home, put the phone in the drawer, and I've at least got an hour or so some nights, or in the mornings when we start the day, that I get to spend some time with them. So that is a connection of some sort, and the connection can be with the outside world, it can be with loved ones, it can be with plants if you like gardening, it can be with an animal, it can be with anything, but some sort of connection that's non-technical, I think, is hugely important. And that can be through practice of mindfulness or meditation. It can be through just some basic breathing. And then lastly, like the obvious one is just making sure you're feeding your body appropriately. And by that, I don't mean chicken breasts and broccoli. I mean making sure that it's not too much, because that then has a cycle on a whole host of things, which leads to negative outputs. But also just trying to move the needle a little bit on where you are to where you want to be. Find a way or an opportunity to be able to start upgrading the fuel you're putting into that incredible, amazing physical thing that you've got, that you've been so fortunate. I mean, it's like a 1 in a trillion chance you're even here. So if the chances are that remote that we're even on the planet, why not make the most of it? Why not go out there and find an opportunity to be a little bit better? Go and see what you can do. I guarantee you that you will be unbelievably impressed with what you can do, right? Like, I genuinely mean that to anybody who's listening who feels they've got a little bit more to give. Go and try and find a way. Go and step outside. Push yourself outside your comfort zone. We're like pessimism's box office in the UK, right? Everybody wants to talk about how bad things are. Like it's what sells. It used to be sex sells. In the UK, it's pessimism. But say, don't listen to those messages. Go frame yourself with positivity. Look at how you can. Start talking about things around, instead of I have to go for a walk, or I have to do so. Start thinking about I get to, because we are privileged, blessed, and given some unbelievable opportunities. So go out there and make the most of it. Today's gone tomorrow, and you won't ever get it back. So step outside, challenge yourself a little bit, and you will get an unbelievable biological feedback from that. And you know that, and I know that, because we've been fortunate to be exposed to that stuff. But the bodies are set up to grow and be educated and be better. So go and make the most of it. Sorry, a bit of a rant.
No, that was fantastic. And I think, just to kind of echo what you were saying there, I think some of the things that I just, over the course of a number of years, just have got into habit of doing is practicing kind of like gratefulness, making sure that I sort of check in with myself, because whenever you're doing something and you're challenging yourself, especially in a fast moving kind of tech company, you're always going from one goal to the next. And I think you've got to make sure you have your flowers while you're there to receive them, right? If you sort of wait right until the end and you put off all sort of gratification and are a little bit too stoic and Spartan, you're not going to enjoy the journey as much as you do. And I think going back to one of the really great points you mentioned earlier, those relationships, whether it's in work, and Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett have a great saying I'm a massive fan of, which is you spend 80% of your time in work with the people you work with. So if you love going into work, you love the people you work with, you're going to have a very satisfied, fulfilled life. Just to kind of echo back on what you said earlier, James. And I think that also then mirrors what you also touched on just now, which is having that sort of intentional social or intentional lazy time almost, where you are switching off. You're not, even if you locked your phone away, you're not thinking about your business, or you're not thinking about the work you've got to do. If you're working for a Fortune 500 company, you're actually spending time with your friends, your family, and really allowing yourself just to enjoy those moments. I think that's so important for both mental health, but also your energy when you then do go back into work and attack the day.
Definitely, and they're all related, right? I mean, gratitude is, again, I hark back to it, but there's a reason it's scientifically proven. It's because it's nature. It's nature's Instagram. It's real life Instagram, and that's what we want to be. We want to be. So, what did I read the other day that I really like? Make today desirable, because too often we're worried about what's going to happen in the future, when we can't even contemplate that without understanding and being grounded in the day. And the opportunities to be grounded in the day and make the body feel satisfied, release that dopamine, feel brilliant. All of a sudden, the things like breathing, like walking, like for me, being able to hug my children, see my wife, the rest of it pales into insignificance. Like Tyson Fury said, these will be gone, this will be gone, these will be gone when I die, but my experiences won't. They'll live with me forever. So you have to appreciate them, because it's like you said, it's too late. Otherwise, you get to the end of it, you're like, great, I sold Verti, or Verti's now, let's say, been floated. What have I got? You've missed the experiences. You've missed those amazing challenges of doing something really hard and feeling, getting a great group of people together to do it. Those things are the things that are the richness of life. Like another great one the other day was, if you want to be interesting, oh no, all the interesting people aren't the ones on social media. They're the ones out there doing. So go and make yourself interesting. If you want to be interesting, go read a book, go do something difficult, go challenge yourself, go learn about something you haven't done before. And then all of a sudden you'll start understanding why.
Just awesome advice. And, James, you've done so many cool things, and I'm sure what you're working on at the moment is going to be just yet another, great success and victory for you. But I'm always really interested to understand who people's heroes are, who sort of keep them motivated, keep them inspired through both the ups and the downs of their respective journeys. So for you, who's been sort of a big hero for you throughout, your whole career and life?
I've got two. And these aren't going to be very fashionable, I'm afraid. So I'll try and use a more common one come the end. But so initially, I think that the last 19 months, whereby we've added twins to a young daughter. We had 3 children under 2, and I watched my wife go through the most unbelievably challenging time, but yet still managed to support our whole family. That for me has been not only a huge driver, but it also gave me just the biggest amount of respect for her. And obviously I love her dearly, and my kids have been a revolutionary addition to our family. So my wife most certainly, but also I just like to lay on top of that, mums. Wow. Like absolutely different level of respect since I've been fortunate to have children. What you go through and what you give, because it's absolutely all consuming. So yeah, my wife, she's been hugely influential in making me a better person. And then prior to that, in my younger years, my mum. So my mum brought us up on her own from about the age, I think I was about 6. She moved us from South Africa to the UK, looked after us on her own, found a way. It wasn't easy. And by no means were we ever unhappy or anything like that, but it was just so difficult to make ends meet sometimes. And what she sacrificed for us was, again, something I'll forever be grateful for. And I'm hoping one day I'll be able to repay that. But no, those 2 people would be the ones who've, I think, given me the values and will help establish the characteristics that I'd like to take forward with our business, and making sure that I can give the opportunities to resources that I didn't have to some people who could really use them. In terms of famouses, don't really know. I quite enjoy some people, but I struggle to have an emotional tie to them. I think there's some really cool people around there, like Stephen Bartlett's doing some amazing stuff. I think he's putting great messages out, and he's pushing the envelope around so many different things. And people like him are going to be important. I genuinely believe he'll probably change the world a little bit in a significant manner, just because of the direction he's moving on so many fronts, in terms of diversity, in terms of normalized thinking for young people, in terms of access to information. So I love The Rock just because he's so cool, right? I just love his positive energy.
Awesome. All great examples, all absolutely fantastic examples. And
can I ask who yours are?
Very good question. So I've got just on my desk, for anyone who's not watching this, because we're recording as well, but anyone who's on the podcast, I always have the Lombardi rules. So I'm a big fan of Vince Lombardi and just coaches in general. Yeah. And again, I think anyone who really is focused kind of around getting the best out of individuals and putting them into teams. And I think a little bit like you, I've had so many great mentors or people who I've sort of learned from, different stages of my life. So again, like my folks and my mum, who's a now retired headmistress. That's probably why I'm obsessed with learning and development so much. And then I've, had the great opportunity of working with some amazing surgeons when I was training in orthopedics, and have some great sort of mentors in the business world, and equally people like The Rock, massive fan of as well, because who isn't? But no,
you can't not be.
Exactly right. Well, James, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. If people do want to get in touch with you, find out more about your business and everything you're working on at the moment, where can they go to access that information?
Well, thank you. So the best place is probably email. We're actually in the process of rebranding, but my email still works. So not a problem. It's just James Parks, so Parkes, at Evexia, EVEXIA-wellness.com. But yeah, I'd say that's the easiest way to get hold of me. And I'm always happy to chat to people, hear from people, offer my meager thoughts on the world. So yeah, and for me, just I genuinely, I've absolutely loved it. I love talking about people in development with anybody, and you're super interesting. I loved what you've done. Thank you so much for having me. I feel a little bit out of place, but hugely enjoyable experience. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure. It's been fantastic speaking with you, and really great luck in everything you'll be seeing in the future. And look forward to catching up very soon. Thanks so much, James.
Legend. Thanks, Alex.